because of comet tails that we discovered solar winds. And what ended up happening was there was some astronomers who were observing these comets, and all of the tails went away from the sun. And they couldn't figure out why that was based on the direction and everything. And it's because of the solar winds that has the tail behind comets. But as far as, saying that there's material, that this is man-made and all that, I hadn't heard that yet. So it almost borders on the whole alien thing, right?
Yeah, you might be a far stretch. But all right, Oscar.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Oscar, doing all right.
Yeah. I'm traveling, so connectivity was somewhat of an issue, but with like 3 minutes to spare, I made it.
Right.
All right. So, guys, good news and a bad news. I'm going to start with the bad news is that I completely mixed up the schedule. Phil from Zapier, he's coming on next week, not today. So today you get us. So, and that's a good news. We can just kind of shoot the shit and ask whatever question you have. Oscar and I, we talked about and Ed, please jump in. I think one thing a lot of people are curious that just what is our journey in terms of having a AI business, helping other business implementing AI. And I know that is something Trevor, you can both you and Edward can speak a lot because that's a lot of what you do implement AI solution for others. So I think we can share our experience. We'd love to hear from you guys, and for the rest of the crew here, like if you have any questions, we would love to be able to just answer them because I know there's just a lots of false expectation right now on internet just with the amount of video I saw that people are like, I'm selling this AI solution that made me 300K a month. I'm like, yeah, take a hike, buddy. It's pretty crazy. So want to be able to address all of these false reality out there and just whatever question you guys have.
Yeah, so that was a classic bait and switch. We use the headline name and then we say, hey, you're gonna get us.
That's right. Yeah, there you go.
No, listen, I will tell you, and so again, I think everybody's figured out this is more of a freestyle format, which seems to work very well. You're not sitting there, hey, can I ask this question? Which I love, right? Because you keep it real. If we don't know, we'll get the answer for you, and we just take it from there. But I think we can kick it off with that as we think about this, and please, anybody chime in because I know, Random Gamer. You are doing some level of consulting, certain things that you're doing as well. And so feel free because everybody's in a different place with their AI journey. Some in the private sector, some I think there's one or two of you have done maybe in the military. So it's good for us to be able to talk through because not everybody has gone through everything, right? So anybody that tells you, oh yeah, I did that, I did this, no, listen, this is a great group of folks because we can actually talk about these things, different areas, and it's going to apply. Again, Random Gamer, I last week or the week prior, you were asking some really good questions, which I was able to relate to because we went through some of those either projects or some growing pains as we continue to grow the business. So I'll tell you. Yeah, go ahead.
I got one for you too.
Yeah.
So so far, I mean, in my journey and in you guys' journey, I believe it's mostly been optimizing processes within businesses, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. So right now, and in my friend's dad's company, he's asking me, hey, do you think like we could use AI for digital marketing? And obviously, I said, of course. But now I'm gonna ask my forward question in content creation for like blogs and editorials. Do you guys like recommend being like fully with AI or having AI more as an assistant with someone that already has like the massive expertise?
I would, thanks, great, Shao. I would say the latter. Here's what I tell you, and it's again, as you said, the word journey. I think initially back in November of 2022, and actually, Ed, you can probably speak to this because you and I started talking a few years back, and I remember how everything grew. But to answer your question, initially people are like, oh my God, all I have to do is say this or maybe put a couple sentences in prompt and it'll write an entire article or whatever you wanted it to write for you. And then real quickly, within a month or a few months, people were realizing, wait a minute, half the stuff isn't real or it's not up to date. If you guys remember, that model, I think, was trained up to, I forgot, early 2022 or something. It was all the information in there was older. So I digress. Initially, using AI and even full automation was great. But people, even up to now, you realize, wait, this is ChatGPT writing, right? You see the dashes, you see the in the evolution or in the era of, or at the intersection of, right? So people are real. This year has been the year of, wait a minute, wow, these people that I thought were thought leaders were actually just doing a copy and paste. And so to answer your question more directly, for us, we did some level of automation. We've never done it fully. And if you look at everything that we talk about both the human and artificial intelligence, our marketing materials, our website. But we've been talking about this for years now, where I think now the majority of folks are saying, okay, wait a minute. There's some validity here. I could try to automate, and we've created some very complex workflows and solutions for clients where it hyper personalizes tremendously. And again, I'll open this up for anybody, right? Ed, Shao, whoever. Now we're at a point, it takes a lot. We have to invest a lot of time. Not just anybody can do it, but we set it up where you really can't tell because it's hyper personalized so much with our own flavor or the client's flavor. And even with that, with the things that we've created, Shao and I will go back and forth and say, hey, you know what? And I'll inject some things in there. I won't go in to do grammatical errors, but I'm always tempted to say, okay, let me really show the human side of this.
So how did you manage to make it that hyper personal? Was it because you refined the prompt, let's say 10 times over, or?
There's different ways, but I'll let Shao and Ed speak to that.
Yeah, I can touch a little bit on that. So I'll give you example the way we use internally. I mean, obviously, in the end, we put a lot of our own flavors to it. But in terms of the content creation process, so for example, I'm trying to see if I can do a screen share, but my terminal is not loading right now. But we have these. I created this entire team of crew AI agent. I can't remember, but I think there's like 16 agents in this team that are working together right now. Each agent has its own tool, has its own very specific role. But on a high level, what it does is it goes out every single day to find the latest news on the internet, because our business is AI, right? So our content is always AI related, to find the latest news regarding AI and then pass that news to the next step to see, okay, which of these news is like being the most searched in Google right now. Now we know, okay, these are the few topic, the top 5 or top 3 topic that's trending, and then pass to a different agent to write content format for different platform. And then we also, I can't find where's the architecture of this thing, but we have another agent also pull from Reddit, right, to see what questions people are asking on places like Reddit regarding AI, and then combine all of this information to pass to another agent that pretty much respond to those questions with the whatever information you find, or turn those questions into content idea and pass to different agents to write content that address to those questions people have on Reddit. Either give me script for me to record TikTok videos, or just articles like blog articles or even newsletters.
So if I may add to make it more precise, because me it's more in the B2B medical business. He's the biggest medical distributor in Canada, and basically I'm telling him like, listen, we can write about the fields that you sell stuff, which is like cardiology, anesthesiology, metabolism, and stuff like that. So would you recommend that I follow your strategy, which would be to have AI agents or just an AI tool go on the internet, find out what these types of people, these physicians or whatever, what they're looking for on the internet, or just pick a subject, toss it into GPT to get some ideas and write on that content?
So
I will automate this with like either just automate it with a framework that does that. The reason is simple. I mean, you can just look for people, or how you can just look for random topic on ChatGPT, but if the topic is something that people are not, is not relevant to people are not like really caring about at the moment, it's not gonna yield result. You want the
I
topic
agree.
that's the hardest, that people resonate the most. Sorry,
So-
Andy, you want to jump in?
Yeah. So I mean, this is more the stuff that I do in terms of like working on content rather than actually on the agent side of stuff. We do a lot of this stuff in terms of, for want of better words, more of a workflow, because it's not set up to be all automated. But the idea is that you can do most of the stages very well with the AI, but with the AI as opposed to, so you can use the AI to do the research, find your topics. You can use the AI to then help you, to identify topics. You can use it for the research. You can use it to, when you find your topic, you do the search. You can use it then to help you draft it. But there's some other, like you can use it to match the tone of existing. So you can put bullet points once you've got your topic, and then have it expand from that. But once you've got the text, you can then ask it to match the tone of your other articles, so it's got some consistency. The one thing I'll stress with anything to do with medical topics is have a person check it, because it's very easy for it to get things mixed up, and you will lose a hell of a lot of goodwill, or obviously more serious legal repercussions if it starts saying things that aren't true. There's so difference between there being a not in a sentence or not can completely reverse the meaning of what it's putting out. And when using it to summarize scientific papers, literally we've had it summarize it in a way that there's a whole lot of journal editors looked at it and they didn't notice the difference. And the only people, when they reviewed it, and the only people who did were the actual original authors of the paper. Now, presumably you're not looking at going into that much detail as they were, but still you need someone who knows the topic just to give it a sense check at the very least. But yeah, all of the individual stages from research all the way through to your final version, you can use AI to assist. I would recommend you have a human in the loop checking it at as many stages as is practical. There are some things that you can automate once you're happy with them, but for the first few times I'd do them manually and check and compare them to the automated version type thing, and then automate what you're comfortable with automating after that. But there should always be a human in the loop checking it before that final version goes out, because if it's going to go out representing the company, you can't afford to say things that aren't true or give someone bad advice or anything like that. I'd also say for topics, rather than just looking at what is being talked about at the moment, if you've got something like, you say, cardiology or something like this, you can look at the big congresses that are coming up and what is going to be talked about at those congresses, and then plan what you're going to be saying to come out around the time of the congress, either just before or during. So, for example, cardiology, you look at something like the European Society of Cardiology meeting, or the American Heart Association meetings, or, the big congresses. You can see the abstracts that have been submitted, that they're going to be the high-profile talks, so you'll know that you don't know the results yet, but you'll know what topics they're on. They are very likely to be high-profile topics during that time as people are discussing the results. So you can find, obviously it might not be the most high-profile ones that you're after, but the ones that match whatever your friend's company does, or their interest, their aspect. See what the talks are that match within that aspect, and then tailor it around those to join those conversations.
Yeah. No, thank you, Andy. That's
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Edward, you want to share something about your experience?
Yeah, I was actually just going to agree with Andy on that one, actually. Because the nature of what you're doing is medical, it's probably just a good idea to have someone to read over what the AI is outputting, because I think I said this a couple of sessions ago, but what an AI will put out for the average person who isn't involved in the field. So I'm pretty sure if I put out something about space defense and I read it, I was like, this is incredible, this is the best things in Star Wars, and Trevor looked and people already go, this is terrible, what is this? And then you throw in a trash can, and quite rightly so. And I think when we talk about AI, when we talk about other fields involving AI, the job from my perspective as a prompt engineer is to almost hold someone's hand and guide them through the process of what I'm doing. So if you're making content to put out there, whether it's Instagram posts or it's just something as simple as a blog post, you really do want to have someone who's an expert to sit with you and judge the outputs and judge the prompt and how it works. Because ultimately, from a prompt engineering perspective or just prompting perspective, what might look incredible to you probably might not look incredible to an expert. And I think that's where quite a lot of contention comes from, because when we talk about AI being good or bad, that's a very subjective thing. And we can blame the prompt as much as we want and the person prompting, but ultimately, if someone thinks it's bad, it's because of their own individual understanding of the output. And basically, I'm just rewriting exactly what Andy said, which is you do definitely need a human in the loop just to clarify whether or not the information that's being outputted is correct and probably more importantly useful. In terms of agents and AI tools, I think Xiao was definitely onto something. I think it's a good idea to have an automation in place to sort of scrape the internet and figure out what's coming up or potentially what are people talking about.
Yeah.
And it allows you to prep the content ahead of time, and then you can just basically be one step ahead of the game. But that's basically my take on it.
Yeah, and if I can I want to add. So I love how this metamorph or transferring into a lot of the different pieces of it. When you think about when we're dealing with clients, initially, again, to the point that many of you have made, they may not understand. It sounds like it's great. And we're okay. We encourage, hey, we will do all these things, but want to make sure you understand once this is in place, it might be posting things for you, etc. We recommend within a matter of weeks, as they're going through every single thing that's being posted, just to make sure you have to verify for accuracy, all of those things, right? We tell them, look, now you really want to hone this into your own voice, right? And because it's a process, it's not something that happens within a week or two or a month. ChatGPT 5, I think the jury's still out, right? It depends how you work. A lot of people are complaining about a lot of different things. I think it was just maybe false expectations that were set. And I say GPT-5 because that's what the majority of folks use out there. I don't know, the last stats I looked at, I think about 3 months ago, and I think it was about 70% of what the regular consumer was using as far as large language models for writing, right? Where you have others like Claude and others that might be a lot better for you. But it's important as you go through this journey and all the things that everybody's mentioned on here that you continuously revisit and just continually fine tune. But I can tell you, the clients we work with within about a month to maybe 6 weeks, it's humming really good. But we're on them, like almost on at least 3-4 times a week to say, hey, I need your feedback. You need to take a look at this. And if they don't answer, then we're on them within, the next day, because we want to make sure by the time it's all said and done, I think to Edward's point, you can blame the prompt, you can blame all these things, but it's how we use it and how dedicated we are. And because the way AI is right now, it's so simple in many ways that it's easy to say, oh, it did everything for me. Let me just let it go. No, we continue to push individuals to say, nope, do not trust it until you've really gone and looked at every single thing it's doing and it's putting out for you. So we stress test it. And again, within 4 to 6 weeks, it might get better in the future, but at least our experience, because our clients, they have 2 jobs. Their day job, what they're dedicated to, and their second job is giving us feedback around the solutions that we implement. And we tend to be second. Even though they're excited, they have to be able to pay the bill still. So it's all these things that you have to take into account because things do change.
Yeah.
And also just say, with the kind of workflow thing, and you say about GPT, it's different, I'm sure you're already aware, but different platforms are better at different things. So we have various bespoke platforms for collecting the information from, what a doctor's saying at the moment, what does field medical report back on what's happening, fine. But then GPT is quite good for a lot of the heavy lifting general processing. And personally, for the last few years, Claude's actually been better for writing and tone of voice. And what you can do in terms of brand, it's good to have a writing tone. So what you do, if there's already some company stuff they've put out, you can use that to set the initial tone. But once you have a few posts or articles, you can start archiving them and giving it that. And the last step is literally just check this and convert against that tone to match the tone of the existing one, so you have some consistency in the tone that you talk about. And obviously, for some situations, you might want to change that. Hey, this is actually targeted, direct consumer versus trying to tell the medics about it. I don't know what products your friend's company has, so you might want to change the tone in that sense. But just to give a kind of brand consistency is good to then effectively have project folders with relevant content there, so you can tell it to match the tone for kind of final polish.
Yeah, and one really good tip is I'm surprised a lot of people are not aware of this. And like you mentioned, obviously Claude, in terms of writing content, Claude is hands down the best. I mean, it's just the way they design it is very intuitive. But if you're using a model like ChatGPT's API, actually, I think all models you can do that. You can adjust the weight of the model. For example, if you go to a website called the OpenAI Playground, you can actually see there, like the lower the weight is. Actually, was that? I can't remember if the weight is a name for it. Let me open it up and so I can do a screen share. But there is parameter you can adjust. Like the lower those parameter is, the less it get is less creative. It follows for example, your brand guideline more strictly.
Are you referring to temperature, maybe?
Yes,
Or-
temperature. Thank you.
Okay.
That's what I'm.
Yeah, because I've been on OpenAI and like the playground, like APIs, OpenAI Assistant, and all that stuff, and even LangChain, I believe, if that's what it's called. Yeah, I can use that to
LangChain is a
adjust.
framework. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can adjust those things, and I've taken those into consideration too. But the Claude being better for writing, no, I was not aware.
Yeah, Claude is. So if you haven't tried out, and Gemini, surprisingly, Gemini is also pretty decent at writing, and a lot of people are. I don't know why people don't use Gemini. Trevor, what is your take on the Gemini model? More from the engineering side.
You're on mute.
You're muted.
I haven't used Gemini that much. I'm more familiar with Claude and GPT 4. I haven't actually delved in too much with 5, so I'm not a good person to talk in regards to Gemini. But I will say though, the thing that as we're able to build content very quickly, I mean, you have to realize too that as humans, we're only able to take in so much so fast.
True.
And for me, if you're able to generate content every day, or let's say every hour, there's probably not much of that content. There's a point or threshold that you're not even going to be able to consume. So
Yeah.
I would say, and we're talking like this already, that take the time, as Andy was saying, to make sure what you're curating is meeting your needs. I wouldn't worry so much about getting it out, but make sure it's quality. Because I know for me, I'm an engineer, so I'm not big into reading. So if you give me 50 things a week to read, I may only get 5.
Let me ask you, Edward, because I think here, I remember you used to be an editor or copywriter, and you built, early on with LinkedIn, you built a lot. I know you did a combination of your own flavor, but also using large language models. To the point where you got, the like a top voice within LinkedIn. So curious to see or hear your thoughts on the evolution and then all the different points that everyone's made on here.
The evolution of just generally people using it for content?
Well, yeah, as far as content creation, right? So when I started this, I was talking about, prior to GPT, I think it was 3 or whatever, in November 22, right? There was a certain way. And then that came in. And then as you see it evolve, 23, 24, and now we're in the middle of 25.
From my perspective, I started my entire journey basically as a copywriter, and I think I've had this strange, just oddly enough, like last night with my girlfriend, and I started this from the perspective almost like of shame, because the one job out there that probably has its head in the sides is probably copywriting and content writing. And the reason why is because if you use ChatGPT, although to a copywriter and a content writer, the content that you write may not be fantastic with ChatGPT if you prompt it, ultimately the reader of it isn't going to be me as a copywriter, it's going to be someone else who will find that article useful. So from my perspective, if I'm writing copy and the reader finds it useful, then that's all that really matters, if I was to simplify it down to a nut. But going back sort of to the beginning of the conversation about what do we do with the content, it starts becoming more about who's the expert behind the article. And that's where the shame starts coming in around, you know, how do I as a copywriter reconcile selling and promoting the thing that will ultimately take my job? And so when I started eventually talking about AI from that perspective, because I really enjoyed using it, like I'm sure many of you here do, eventually became my thing. And then as Oscar kindly said, it ended up with me having the top voice in AI for prompt engineering. And I think I was the first one on LinkedIn to get it. But I think as time has gone on, we start to see more and more issues around AI generated content. And it's not so much that people are using the tool, because I think if we're in the field, it's obvious that people are going to use the tool. What's the point of having it if you're not going to use it? It's not a tech demo. And I think the real problem comes down to just one very, very simple thing. And it's who's actually giving that information, who's the authority behind it. Because anyone can generate content with ChatGPT and they can put their name behind it. They can sort of put their stamp of authority on it and say, this is something that I wrote. I'm very, very proud of it. And my very first client was someone like that. And I won't drop names. I won't do that just in case she tracks me down. But she wrote an entire white paper using ChatGPT, and she found the references to fit into the white paper. And to me, from an ethical perspective, I'm like, well, you might agree with everything that's on that white paper from your perspective, but what's to say that it's qualified to be a white paper if not just your stamp of approval? That's an authoritative sort of thing that you're doing. It's just a that's ironic. The term slips my brain. It's a biases, but that's the problem. And so I think as time has gone on, obviously large language models are getting better, and there's ways around it now that people are thinking of, like such as running digital twins and their own versions of experts so that they can get their copy checked. And if that digital twin says, yep, this is great, but as like an expert who has 25 years in the field, I would add this, this, and this, and this. And people are getting around it that way. And there's a lot of influencers on LinkedIn, on X, anywhere really, who are doing that currently. They know very, very well that their background is in, let's say, something like, I don't know, being a detective, for instance, and now they're new into AI. And so because they don't have the knowledge of AI yet, they'll generate a persona of them or of a figure that they potentially admire who has that personality. And then they'll create the content, match it against the digital twin or the digital personality, and then they'll get a critique from that digital personality, and then they'll remake the content again and then push it out. And so it's interesting to see the way that people have adapted, because that's what we're headed towards. And I sort of referenced in our first session about the importance of personality when it comes to large language models, because what we're seeing right now, and as Oscar said, we're seeing this thing where the jury is still out about ChatGPT 5. And I really don't want to be reductive and say that most people hate ChatGPT 5 because it's a personality thing and people prefer the warmth behind 4.0. I think that's a quite big contingent that people really did care about how caring GPT 4.0 felt and how real it felt. But I think it's interesting that we're focusing in on the personality of an AI. And because ChatGPT 5 has come out as a tool rather than a personality-based AI, people aren't gelling with it as well. They don't think it's as intelligent. And it's not to say that GPT-5 is without error or anything else, of course. But I think we're heading towards a situation now where, one, people are asking who is the expert who wrote this paper, what validates them to make the claims that they're making. But also, two, we're having people who realize this, and in return, they start emulating those personalities so that they can fill that void. But I know it's strange talking about it now, because the idea of talking about this only 3 short years ago would have been science fiction. But now we're 3 years into the future, we're talking about digital twins and digital personalities and an AI to proof check the AI's writing. But it's sort of where we're going. You know, it's sort of similar to agent orchestration, where you have one agent in one thing, that agent checks another thing, and then finally it synthesizes an output.
So, if I may ask, when you say a digital twin and all, how exactly did someone pull that off? And I know that obviously AI can clone stuff, but what I'm more so trying to say is my friend's dad is really an expert when it comes to neuromuscular monitors and let's say electrocardiograms and all that stuff. How can I take what's in his head and just put it in an AI? That's where I like don't follow really much.
To be honest, I'll let you in on this one in a second, Joe.
Yeah.
From my perspective, because quite a big part of my offering to corporates as Cyberpunk 2077, as it sounds, is creating these sort of digital twins or these engrams of people calling it. And the thing is, there's 2 ways to do it. And one of them is to make assumptions about the person within the role. And you can sort of create an idea of what that digital twin would look like based on the personality of a person within that role. Of course, it isn't going to be 100% accurate. If you're letting ChatGPT, probably not going to be that, but fill in the blanks. But what the companies I'm working with are doing is they'll have demographical data, and it'll be stuff that they've literally gone out and they've harvested from their customers, like how old they are, the general kind of life habits, their eating habits, how often they buy medicine or something along those lines. And they'll take all of that information, sort of anonymized, and they'll put it into an AI, and the AI will then start filling in and making logical assumptions based on what they're doing. And this isn't the first time we've heard of stuff like this. If anyone's used Facebook before and the ad platform before the whole Cambridge Analytica problem, they used to have something called the affinity meter. So that is basically what they have tried to replicate within generative AI. So the affinity meter would say this person likes Coca-Cola, this person also likes, I don't know, Burger King. It would be a safe assumption to say that this person probably enjoys food. Therefore, let's slot in that they enjoy eating fast food periodically, because why else would they like Burger King and Coca-Cola? And so you just start slotting in these random assumptions and generations. From your father's perspective, and putting a neurosurgeon or someone who's generally skilled in that field, I think the best thing to do would honestly just be to sit them down and ask them a load of questions and just clarify with them just what makes them tick, what their day-to-day looks like, and get a good 80-20 of what a day with them looks like. And if you're going to make a digital twin of them, see if it can expand a little bit when you start generating the demographic data, and just make sure that it doesn't like go too tangential, because I think there's always a potential for it to go too tangential. And then you can have something that's quite close. It wouldn't be 100% close, but it would still be enough to start generating, ideas and the things that you would probably miss without the knowledge of having neuro-related things.
So if I had to guess, my first step with this would probably be to have him use Whisper, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he would just speak to Whisper. It would be transcribed accurately, and then I run it into the whatever tool I would use for the digital twin. Correct?
Yeah. I mean, it's a case of 20 questions. If you don't particularly know what to ask, ironically enough, that is probably what ChatGPT is probably good for, just generating those 20 questions that you want to ask someone within his particular field, and just getting good 80-20 of what he does. And I just want to loop all the way back to Andy's point. It definitely isn't a replacement for an actual expert. However, it's not going to stop companies realistically from doing this anyway, because it saves a lot of time and also, more importantly for them, a lot of money. But yeah, that's how I do it. I'd probably start with 20-30 questions, just get a good idea of the personality, what they've read, what their day-to-day looks like, if there's anything that's like repetitive within their job. God knows, if you're a doctor, you have to do quite a lot of diagnostic stuff. So the day-to-day there was probably, there's a few things that look same old and it's the same thing every single day. But there are things that they would know that you just simply wouldn't be able to pick up on just by yourself, Yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to add something here. When we talk about, I think, Edward, like when you mentioned, you can always have the ChatGPT or whatever generate the 20 questions, right? When you're talking something that's such a finite specialty, like what Random Gamer's friend's father, I think it was, does and is looking to do, that's where you need a lot of that human expertise. You can get it from a large language model, but you have to know how to prime it or prompt it, whatever you want to call it, to ask the right questions. There's a lot of work that's involved to say, hey, this is what my end goal is, right? And everybody prompts differently. It's what my end goal is. This is my audience. This is what I'm trying to do, and it can help you. But we love bringing in that human expertise to be able to provide that. So again, if you're trying to build that digital twin, and we worked on projects like that, I mean, there's some that will take anywhere from 6 months to well over a year. Depends on how good, how detailed, what you're trying to do. I think a lot of people have made an effort. We've come in and seen, okay, it's a decent start, but it's nowhere near. And then obviously they get frustrated because it's not done the way they want it. It doesn't capture everything. And somebody on here said, then they blame AI, right? It's just because you don't have the clear understanding on how to use it. And so it's important. If you're, did you say you're building it, or you're going to start it random?
So essentially, we're gonna follow a Q4 content program, right? And he's invited me
Okay.
to bring in AI expertise, and I'm working closely with his main project manager, and we're having these 1 to 2 weekly calls talking about it. And so far, I worked on a prompt to just build a base for blogs, with headers and in between 900 to 1100 words, stuff like that, on the topics that we gravitate towards, right? And my friend's dad, he read it. He said it's cool, it's nice, but obviously it's not ready to be just posted right then and there. So now we're at the part where we're just brainstorming how we're gonna make it, near perfect to be able to post it and then replicate the results.
Yeah, I mean, to get there, I don't think you have to have a human in the loop in the end, because right now, I mean, you're competing AI content with AI content. So the only way to stand out at the moment really is just like add back to the human piece, which is kind of a irony, because we're like trying to automate it just to add more human work in the end a lot of time. Or another idea is, I mean, just spend a hell of a time fine tuning prompt every single day. And then if that doesn't work, build another layers of build another agent, kind of like how I architect mine, that do additional editing, fine tuning. Like I find that to be very effective when it comes to content creation, because a lot of time, like I got to a bottleneck of, doesn't matter how much I fine tune a prompt in that one agent, the output is not gonna change that much anymore. But when I pass that to a fresh agent to do fresh editing with a completely different set of prompt, the result tends to be a lot better. But every use case is different. You just really have to poke around and see whatever works. Like I came across that, or like the way I design it, just like randomly. I was like, well, I couldn't figure this out. Let's just see like how a human do it. If I couldn't figure this shit out, I'm gonna pass it to someone that I know is gonna do a better job, right? See if they can write better. It's the same mindset you can apply to when it comes to architecting AI. If this one agent is not doing good enough job, maybe you can, for example, originally I was using 4.1 for Agent 1 to write content, which is the best writing model from OpenAI. It still couldn't get me to the point that I am satisfied enough, but I passed it to Class Sonic 4.0 first. It got better, and then I passed that again to Sonic 4.1. It got even better, and I did a comparison versus only like if I just pass the first result directly to Sonic 4.1. It's not as good as passing through Sonic 4.0 first, then passing to 4.1. it's a lot of those like little details that it's very interesting how they work. Like I don't know why that is, but I tested multiple times. It works. It just gives me a better result.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll try to implement that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean the same way with the human in the loop approach, I say. So it's not agent to agent, but it can be quite good to develop it in one and then have effectively get the other one to critically review it as its persona and give you the feedback for suggestions. And you can read them and you might disagree with them, that's fine, but it can give you some quite quick, easy ideas to improve it. So, for example, come back and say, oh, this seems very technical for the audience you said you're going for, try to simplify, whatever. The point is, it can give you quite general things. If you also have the sources, so when you're first asking it to do the research, get it to give you the links to where it's got the stuff from. It makes it easier to check. Also, when you get towards the end, you can say, given these, or even if it's just like a single article, you give it, say, I want to write a short piece about this, whatever it is. The point is, if you can point it to those links and sources at the end, you can then get another agent to speed up the fact check. And, don't get me wrong, person should still look at it, but it can flag any serious problems very quickly before a person reads it to give it a sense check and everything else.
Yeah. One thing I want to circle back to is I think it was Random Gamer, you asked about the digital twin thing, right? And Edward was talking about, just giving context. I mean, I think Edward touched on this a couple of weeks ago. Context is always the biggest problem we're seeing with AI right now in terms of how good the output is. When it comes to digital twin, I think depends on what you're building that digital twin for, right? So for your friend's dad, for example, I don't know what exactly he does in medical, but let's just say if this guy is a brain surgeon, right, and he want to build a digital twin with all his brain surgeon knowledge, that's relatively easier because you can, if he wrote a book or something, he's been on a bunch of interview, you can literally just feed those to the AI to have those knowledge and pull from it. And those type of, the medical knowledge, those very niche knowledge, they don't change as often. But we've also run into cases where CEOs say, hey, can you build a digital twin of me to help me to make, better business decision and just pretty much duplicate me, for a lot of business stuff. I mean, we can build it, but that's extremely difficult because just when it comes to making decision on your day-to-day life and your business, there's so many things that influence your decision, right? The opinion you have yesterday, you might have just run into someone that night and you had a 5-minute conversation with it that completely changed the way you're going to make the decision next day. How is the AI gonna know that? And how, if it doesn't have that context, it's not gonna be able to make the most up-to-date suggestion or decision for you. The way I can think of that over concept is like, I mean, you can build an app where you basically remind the person like every day at 7 a.m. say, hey, tell me about everything that happened last night. If you have any new thoughts that come out, and you just talk to it, and then you use speech to text to put those information back to the knowledge base of the AI. I mean, that's a startup idea itself. So if anyone want to build it, please go build that startup. Like that's how I can see that happen.
Just as a technical question, sorry. I know there's a lot of concern at the moment with all these people doing like using AI as therapy or conversation, just as to chat to conversation, and effectively because the context window is only a certain length, the longer they talk to it, the more likely it is to kind of jump out of the guardrails that were put in place at the start. So if you've got one of these things and you're talking to it and updating it every day, is there some limit or a point at which you ought to do the equivalent of clearing the cache and reset it so as to avoid it? But getting, in theory, the context you're giving is all great, but as I say, those original guardrails, if they aren't freshly reinforced at some point, then surely there's a risk of it going off the rails.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think from my perspective, because hands up, like I haven't made the therapist myself, but I've helped people in pretty bad decisions make a therapist themselves. But I think you're right in terms of the guardrails. I think we could talk about prompt injection techniques all day and jailbreaking techniques, but I think it's ironic that the longer you talk to a large language model, any one of them out there at the moment, you're right, the longer you talk to them, the higher the chance that you're going to jailbreak it. Let's call it that. In reality, it's just mitigating its own guardrails. And I think if you were to go ahead and make something which is basically like almost a therapist, I think it'd probably be better just to make it a journal buddy rather than anything else, like 20 questions a day or something like that, where you just sit down, reflect for 15, and then it'll just output a document at the end that's shortened and condensed, maybe even into a JSON file, and then it just saves into a location so you can reference it via SharePoint later if you were to make a massive digital twin. But I think there is a danger that people get far too attached to these AI companions. And I think I don't want to reference movies or anything like that because it's probably bad practice to do that. But I think Her is a very, very good example of that. And when you start getting attached to the AI systems as they are currently, I think you do run a quite massive ethical risk. Let's just be honest. I think there are companies out there that are being incredibly irresponsible around the whole concept of AI therapists and AI companions. I think Elon Musk is probably playing with fire a little bit with Annie. I think it's a little bit, and he knows what he's doing, of course. He knows that sex sells, and that's why he's doing it. He's going to get quite a lot of lonely men who pay $250 a month just to talk to an anime girl who gradually removes her clothes. And it works. It works. And I think we're going to see a future later, probably 2026, I would say is probably a bit too late in the year, where we start seeing far larger context windows. But we're also going to start seeing companies like OpenAI, like Google, who go, look, we can't feasibly do all of these lawsuits where people keep on misusing the AI and we're getting the blame for it because our guardrails just weren't strong enough. Instead, let's just have an 18+ mode. You put the disclaimer in, and you say you're responsible for your actions on this app, just like you're driving a car. If you crash it, if you misuse it, that's on you. And that's probably the future we're heading towards, because it's just impossible to police these large language models.
I think it's interesting with that because the one thing that none of them are licensed for at the moment is to actually be used to give medical advice. And yet they're all skirting as close as they can to it. I say they're all, particularly GPT-5, whereby, it's great for doing this, and this, and look, here's a cancer patient who had to, help her make a decision, actually as part of a launch video. And yet none of them are regulated to be used as medical devices. So they're all, you can use it to simplify information, medical information. And there's still, as I say, issues with simplifying information. The example I gave is only from last year, where they do make mistakes, but this particular one was just really subtle from the research we're doing. But in the meantime, they're all trying to say it can help with all these medical things. Yeah. They're all trying to avoid stepping over the line and claiming it was actually a medical software tool, because none of them are US or UK licensed for that at this stage. And there's a whole load of regulatory things that have to jump through before they'd be allowed to do that. I don't think any of them want any of the big, because there are some bespoke ones that are trying to do that as actual trials, but none of the big LLMs are trying to go that way. They're literally trying to get as close as they can to appeal to the mass market without crossing that line.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I take my position, because it is really just my opinion when it comes to the 18+, the sort of car driving analogy, the reason why I'm going that direction is because realistically, I think companies like Grok, like ChatGPT, OpenAI rather, they're looking at it from the perspective of, well, we can get as close as possible, but it's just a nightmare to get through all of the paperwork. And today it might be in the medical stuff, but then later down the line it could be engineering related, and it's just all this stuff. And so they're going to probably step back and go, let's be honest, people are using this tool for different things. People are using this hammer. One of these people are using the hammer to create beautiful sculptures. The other people, they're using the hammer to create carpentry related things with their chisels. The point is the tool is being used by whoever's wielding it to produce particular kind of results. And I think what we're going to see is they're going to just step back, and they're probably going to treat it a lot like a game, a video game. And they're going to say, here's the base game, here's Skyrim. Now we're going to let you go absolutely crazy with the mods. And you can, yeah, you can go crazy with the mods. You can make a doctor, you can make an engineer, you can make a consultant, you can do this, you can do that, you can do that. But it's not us. It's not our thing. They made it, so the legal liability is on them. And I think that's probably the direction we're going to head in, I reckon.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, as well as it being just complicated and expensive, expensive is a silly thing to say on the amount of money these companies are dealing with, but it's complicated and expensive to jump through all the regulatory hoops to get approved. Oh, yeah. It's even more complicated than because the existing kind of software as a medical device type regulation, how does that apply to AI if the AI can learn and adapt? Because the version that they vet isn't necessarily the version once it's been working for a week and starts learning from the stuff it's doing. It's effectively a slightly different piece of software. Not only that, every time you want to upgrade in terms of the new model of GPT or whatever it's based on comes out, the fact is that, again, is a different one that will have to go through those regulatory hoops. So from a practical point of view, they just don't want any of that smoke. But the smaller companies might, but they'd have to effectively lock it down to a particular version that they took through, got approved as things stand. And unless they're idiots, they're going to have to make it very restricted as to what sort of things it will do. Still be applying the AI, but to within a particularly narrow field to practically get it through the hoops and not just open up a world of legal liability.
Yeah, I suppose that, like, on the other side of that coin, that is probably the attraction to many investors towards small language models, because I suppose from their perspective, one, it's not agentic, but you could make it agentic, I suppose. But for a small language model perspective, it would probably be far easier to get the licenses that you would need in order to deploy it somewhere, because ultimately it's just trained on a particular set of data rather than, a large language model which knows everything. And the chances of you setting a large language model that knows, I don't know, how to perform brain surgery, but also somehow knows how to perform nuclear fission is probably far harder to pass through whatever stages of licensing they need, versus a small language model that just knows medicine. And because you can prove the training data is there and what's read and what it's been trained on, is probably a far more appealing choice to investors as well. So I think in the future, I think the large language model side of things will probably be the car analogy again. I think they'll just keep it at the Wild West with mods and probably what they originally envisaged the custom GPT store to be, from a chat GPT perspective. But I also think that small language models will probably play a quite large role in the future, where they do try to get licensing and try to get these sorts of things through the door. But who knows? It's all up in the air at the moment. It's anyone's game. I think NVIDIA have cracked something related to small language models. It's on my reading list.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's an interesting ethical debate, that's for sure.
Yeah. Small local models definitely can cut out a large amount of the regulations that have to jump through, and obviously data security and stuff gets better if everything's running locally for that kind of thing as well.
For sure, yeah, far cheaper too.
Speaking of model training, Trevor, I want to pass this question to you. Because this is more, I think, more on the engineering side of things.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of just people talk about, oh, I'm going to train an AI model, do this and do that. But in reality, it's like, if you understand the amount of resource it take and the complexity of training a model, you will know, like, people that say that don't really know what they're talking about, because you don't need to train a model for everything. So if you can kind of give us a little insight of both on either large language model and small large language model, what does it really take to train a model in terms of finance, resource, etc.?
Yeah. So one thing that I find that helps training a model, especially for a unique purpose, is actually understanding the data set. And actually, I don't even get into the actual model development until I have a chance to understand, okay, what's this data set? How many features are there? I start doing things like principal component analysis. I start doing R-squared, because depending on the actual content of the data, you're actually limited on how well a model can even operate. And there's different things. So understanding the data set is, to me, one of the key things. And like a simple equation like, force equals MA. You can derive that by just doing different design of experiments, but you're going to get a huge different answer where it's going to put in, higher order terms, probably with a very low weight, but it's still going to be included. So the aspects of understanding your data set will allow you to really understand what you can get out of it. And it's kind of, getting ahead of the aspects of what we consider artificial intelligence, machine learning. But I have found that as I get more involved in doing the initial processing of data, I have different levels of confidence. Well, will this model work, or it will drive me to a different set of models? And now I'm going back to pretty basic stuff, where like deep learning, neural networks versus transformers. But understanding the data can actually derive different techniques that you should use and that you shouldn't use. So I guess my point is, you just can't say I've got this data set and that data set is going to effectively give me a model that's going to be useful. That's not a true statement.
Right. So when it comes to, I guess, on an average cost of training a large language model or small language model, what are we looking at in terms of cost? Are we talking about millions of dollars with a bunch of CPU in a room, or like what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, everything I'm hearing, and I haven't dealt with large language model training, but from everything I'm hearing, it's thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of GPUs, lots of energy, basically a data collection center that looks like a huge warehouse, which I haven't had any type of data sets that require that type of computational power or energy, which is the challenge I work at in the project I'm working on, this venture, is we're trying to put artificial intelligence and machine learning on orbit, where you may get 100 or 200 watts out of a set of solar panels max, and so it takes a lot, which brings me to, I think I made this point earlier. I think the evolution of where we're going with models need to look at energy efficiency. Obviously, nature has developed our brains to only use 20 watts, and yet it's very powerful. And how quickly it can learn and how quickly it can reason. So to me, the evolution of modeling needs to get away from these large data collection centers and really understand, from a modeling standpoint, what do we need to do different? Because what we're doing now, to me, is equivalent to brute force, because it's so computationally and energy intensive. But to your point, I mean, there are ways that you can say, yeah, I'd like to take this data set and train a model, and it's just never going to happen. And it's nothing wrong with your data, just maybe the data that's available just doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, and Trevor, you bring up a really good point, which we'll have to pick up on the next live that we do. But you said something around the approach we're taking is almost brute force, and it's not just for one area; it's multiple.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about where a lot of us live, I know we got a global community here, which I love, but in the United States, we had a framework or policy, and then the new administration came in and said, hey, I'm throwing all this out, we're going to try something new. And now it's almost like the Wild Wild West. And so a lot of these large companies like Amazon, I mean, I'm seeing them pop, they're popping up all these data centers. The things that they're doing, to your point, because of the power needed, and no one's really, I haven't heard the conversation around the environment at all. It's just let's go build it. Let's go. It's almost like when the big SUVs or the back in Detroit, right? Hey, the bigger the better. The more smog you create, let's go, baby. But it's something that we need to talk through. Maybe we'll pick it up on the next one. Flavio, I think you had a question.
Yeah, no, just a small comment. First, sorry for the delay. I was battling the stupid Windows update here. 10 minutes prior to the meeting. And there was a big dispute here in Brazil last week over a huge data center that started to be built in the south part of Brazil. And the environmentalists and everyone were jumping on it. And the result is that they were jumping on false premises, because this data center is going to use 100% renewable energy sources. I don't know if you guys know, but Brazil is the biggest producer in percentage of renewable energy sources. We use hydro, we use wind and sun and everything else. China is getting up on the percentage, but here in Brazil we still have I believe close to 10% overproduction on the demand, and so a lot of heavy energy usage companies that want to open the data center here. But in order to do that, they need to pass environmental license. In order for you to do that, you need to be first water efficient, two energy efficient, and your energy needs to be at least 95% renewable. And if you're using batteries, you cannot use solely lithium-based batteries. You have to use other sort of technologies like liquefied salt batteries or gravity batteries and this kind of thing. I don't know if you guys know, China is building the biggest gravity battery in their plant today. And also, just to finish up, a small question: did anybody watched the Bollywood Batman? Or no one looked for it?
No, it sounds fun,
Please
but no.
do.
That's
Please
a question
do.
for Edward. He's in the Batcave right now.
Please do. Search for Bollywood
On
Batman.
YouTube. That's enough for me.
It's fantastic. And again,
I
sorry for
think
the
that
delays.
I think that's an excellent way to close this out. This has been great. Just any last minute any questions or anything?
Yeah, that
There
one.
we go.
That one precisely. No, the one that he actually flies. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Hey guys, we truly appreciate everybody's contribution, and I think I said it earlier. It's super exciting to be able to see such a global community on here. I think we have 3 continents, actually 4. Sorry, I wasn't good at geography, but this is great. We're looking forward to next week, and next week we actually do have Phil. And I'm gonna check Xiao's calendar and make sure, and I'm gonna send a confirmation. And then we have a few other folks. If there's anybody else that you are thinking, hey, we would love to be able to have this person on, just to be able to pick their brain, get different perspective. If you know them or if you don't, just send us a suggestion in the Skool community, and we will make sure it happens. No matter. If you tell me Bill Gates to help you out with your Windows, I can't help you there, Flavio. But maybe somebody a couple notches lower, but we'll absolutely make it happen.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know who is the person that posts the like the recording of when the meeting is done, but I would just like to know, like, when would it be available, because there was a lot of insight precisely for me in this one, so I'd like to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I typically post it, and I'll typically post it like 2 days or as soon as maybe a day after. But every time you should if you have your notification on, you should also see a notification letting you know that something is posted. But I'll work with Oscar to make sure we get this one posted as soon as possible.
Oh,
Yep,
thanks
yep.
a lot. I appreciate it.
Of course.
You're welcome.
Karma,
Thank you.
you raise your hand.
Hey, Karma.
How you doing, guys? Thank you for allowing me to be here. I don't want to take it too far, I guess, today, but my question, real quick background, is I've been only working with GPT since about 22, 23, early 23. And I've been working on architectures and things like that and trying to solve or come up with solutions that I see need to be done in the future. And you guys raised that in that, like, compute and token usage. Like, I'd really like to touch on that topic maybe next meeting or the following, and get your perspective on what you guys see as solutions for those problems. Like, we're going to have all this compute, all this energy consumption. Is there a way to reduce that, would be my question.
So your question is how can we reduce the token usage, or more on the energy side of things?
Well, I think they go hand in hand. Am I wrong in that assumption?
It's close. Token is more. I think token is more on like the user side. If you're building a solution, that is something that impacts you as a builder, or as any business owner.
I mean, token in comparison to compute, because
got it.
yeah.
Yeah. We'll make sure to touch on that. I think the next call we can definitely go more in depth in it. And I think Trevor, maybe you will be able to give a lot of good insight on that the next call.
Yeah, I can take some thoughts on that, but because I have previously looked at compute as a independent variable in regards to what we can accomplish.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Cool.
That's all.
Thank you, Conrad. That's a great suggestion.
Right.
Yeah. It's good. Yeah, the time just goes by so quick, but now we have two really good topics to continue next week's conversation. And if anything else comes up, like I said, anybody else you want to have us bring on, I love, like I said, that this community stays at about 10 to 12 each time. It seems very, very productive. And any other suggestions, just drop them in there. Like I said, this is 100% for everybody on here, and we appreciate you guys coming on.
Thanks for letting me.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. Have a
Take care,
wonderful
guys.
weekend. I'll see you next week.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Take care.